Yo, it's JP. I'm going to talk today about workplace culture and alcoholism. Okay. I'm a little sick, so please pardon that. But this is a really important topic that I think people need to start talking more about. And it's something that I personally saw in law and in the legal industry. And so I'm just going to get into it. Okay. And I'll start by just talking about sort of my personal experience, right? Um, when I got out of law school, I was very fortunate to start my career at an outstanding law firm. Now, yeah, I got some critique of Boyce Schiller and some of their, stuff over the past 10 or 15 years. But the reality is, when I started my career at Boyce Schiller and Flexner in 2009, it was one of the 5 or 10 most preeminent law firms in America. It did amazing work. It still does amazing work. I've hired Boyce Schiller and Flexner to work on cases with me. Um, the office I worked at was full of incredible people. A lot of really geeky folks, very nerdy, very smart, very eclectic, but a lot of really good people. And we didn't have the sort of culture problems in that office that a lot of other law firms have. Okay, when I left Boyce Schiller and started my own firm in 2012 or 2013, one of the things that I noticed was how much heavy drinking there was at so many other law firms, big and small. I guess the reason why I didn't know that when I worked at Boyce Schiller was because we basically just worked our asses off. Like that was not the culture. The culture of the place was just like fucking grind. Like we're working on $100 million, $200 million, $1 billion cases that are super complex. Like it was not a sort of like party drinking culture type of law firm. But when I started my own shop, and I had time, to go to happy hour, right? My office was in my Fort Lauderdale office is still in the Bank of America building, okay? And that's the same building where my old law firm was. I stayed in the building, got my own space. And so there's always been a bar restaurant downstairs. It's changed names, right? It's been many different iterations. But once I started my own firm, I was like, okay, let me go see how the other half live. All right, let me see what these people do who like have some time where they're not glued to their desk and they can sort of be out there, mix and mingle. And, I would go down to happy hour and I would see all the lawyers and the bankers and the real estate people. And that was my first real exposure to heavy drinking as part of like work culture. Okay. Because I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. It's a very traditional blue collar type place. I taught high school in Baltimore City. I went to law school. Up until that point in time, like I'd never really been exposed to that culturally. And so I quickly learned, like, my God, all these people in South Florida who are either big in law or business or finance or whatever, right? Like these people, so many of them are heavy drinkers, okay? And we're not talking like once in a while. We're talking like it's a daily thing, right? It was the done thing, where these people were like out and about, just throwing them back every day. And so, at first it was kind of like, right, it was kind of like a rite of passage where I was like, oh, this is cool, right? This is how it's done, right? This is what you do. You go out and you have some drinks, you sort of mix and mingle. And I fell into that, for a long time where it just became the done thing. And it wasn't until, COVID and then sort of after COVID, right, where I sat down and I unpacked all of that. And I was like, you know what? I just fell into drinking at happy hour after work as like that's the thing you do in law. And it was normalized and I accepted that and I embraced that. And I didn't really stop and give any thought to like how this is impacting me. Is this really what, I want to be doing or what I should be doing? And I took stock of it and I decided, you know what, for me, this is just not something I like, which you're right, is wild, right? Like I did that for years before I finally stopped and assessed it and was like, you know what, this is not my thing. So fast forward, I talk a lot about law and a lot about the legal industry, okay? And I think this problem is particularly acute in law, but you see it in any industry where it is high stakes, the work hours are intense, and drinking is part of the workplace culture, okay? Um, I'm here to tell you folks, like, that should not be uh, part of your job, okay? Like you should not feel pressure to go along with that sort of stuff, okay? Like, and I don't care what the industry is, but again, you see it a lot in law, you see it a lot in finance, you see it in some real estate, right? But if you work in an industry or in a company where the work is intense, it's long hours, it's sort of very high stakes and stressful, and drinking is part of the culture, either within the company or the industry. Look, I'm here to tell you that that should not be a part of work that is kind of pressured on you, right? Like that should not be something that is the culture and the done thing and where you are expected to go along with it, because that sort of culture and that sort of environment, that leads to nowhere good. Okay? There are a lot of things in American culture and society over the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years that, folks have normalized. Okay? There's a lot of God country Joe Paterno motherfuckers, okay, who have normalized a lot of really fucked up shit, okay? And it's just considered part of the culture and the done thing. And then when you step back and you look at it, you realize, whoa, this is totally maladaptive. This is dysfunctional. This is toxic. This is unhealthy, okay? And the sort of heavy workplace drinking culture, that is one of those things, right? It's, right, we work hard, we play hard. Well, okay, right? There's a certain type of person, primarily man, primarily like, between like 40 and 70, who says that sort of thing, right? Where it's like, we work hard, we play hard, right? And like, they think like that sounds cool as fuck. But it kind of just creeps me out when people say shit like that. Because those types of companies, businesses, environments, firms, right? If that's kind of what you're bragging about, and that's part of your model, your brand, your culture, and that's kind of what you put front and center, to me, that's a red flag. And if you have a certain size, right? Like if you conduct yourself way, if you broadcast that, like you work hard, play hard, right? Like, and you have, let's call it 100 plus employees, I bet you, right? I would bet you a fucking house that there's a bunch of skeletons in the closet and a bunch of shenanigans, because companies that operate that way always have a bunch of skeletons in the closet and a bunch of shenanigans. Why? Well, because it's obvious. It's obvious, okay? Anything that's high stakes, intense work hours, and there's a heavy drinking culture, that is just a recipe for shenanigans. So if you are, in a job, if you're in an industry where you are confronting this sort of culture, you have to take a step back and you have to recognize, and I hate to go back to law because it's broader than law, but I see it so often in law. And so I just want to talk about that specifically. I see a lot of situations involving very large law firms, okay? And very large law firms are particularly unique from a sociological standpoint, from a societal standpoint, because very large law firms are like a bizarro universe. They are their own separate, isolated, little perverse, maladaptive world, right? They're like the biosphere, right? Big law is its own biosphere, okay? It's like cordoned off, it's separated from society. And the type of stuff you see in big law looks nothing like humanity and the world and society, and the types of people and characters you see. Like I would always look at, some of these prominent, powerful big law partners, okay? I would just look at them, kind of sideways and just be like, wow, like, okay, this person could not go to the grocery store and buy groceries. It would be too overwhelming for them, right? Like I've known partners in big law firms where it's like, yo, I will make you a bet that partner X has not been to the grocery store and not gone grocery shopping in at least 30 years. Okay. Why? Why? Well, because one, he's busy billing hours. Okay. Like some of these people, once they get to a certain level in the big law game, okay, anything that normal humans do, they do not have the time to do because they are so important, and they can be billing hours and making $1,500 or $2,000 an hour for that time. And so they outsource everything, right? They don't do anything for themselves. They are totally incapable of existing in the world for a single day as a regular human being, let alone a week. Right? I don't know, like these people, like some of them have, right, like they have pets, but they have people who take care of their pets, and if they have kids, they have people who raise their kids. If they get groceries, but they don't actually get, right, the other people shop their groceries, other people handle all their shit, everybody takes care of their yard, takes care of their pool. They don't ever do anything for themselves, right? But if some of these people had to live for a single week as a regular person, where they actually had to do shit, like regular people shit, right? Mow the grass or something. One, they couldn't fucking do it. Two, it would be overwhelming. And three, a lot of these people who are basically high blood pressure, raging alcoholics, heart attack waiting to happen, could not walk a mile to escape from a nuclear war, right? Like a bomb blows up and they got to walk a mile to get away. They couldn't make it. They'd be dead, right? They'd keel over, right? These types of people, like a lot of these people, these are your big law overlords, okay? And so big law tends to be its own sort of cordoned off, bizarro world where you have these people who could not exist a day, let alone a week in regular society, but these people are the masters of the universe. And you have, a not insignificant number of these folks who are raging alcoholics, okay? Men, give or take 40 to 70, raging alcoholic, power player in big law. And we're talking, when you say law, right? We're not talking about, folks who have jobs that require, right, like physical output, okay? We're not talking about a job where somebody has to have their coordination, their agility. We're talking about a job where people are gonna sit at a desk or meet with clients or talk with clients, right? So a lot of these folks that are heavy drinkers, they start the drinking at like 11 o'clock, noon, lunchtime, 1 o'clock. A lot of these folks have booze in their office. They have cabinets full of booze. They have a restaurant downstairs, okay? They've got their suppliers. They've got their friends who keep stuff for them. Some of these people, they start drinking at 11 or 12 in the morning. Big law partners, big prominent big law partners, rainmakers. They control many millions of dollars worth of business. It's not just that they bill a bunch of hours. A lot of these folks also control significant chunks of business, many millions of dollars worth of business. And so they are raging alcoholics. They have teams of people who work for them. They themselves just will look at something and be like, no, we have to do X. No, we have to do Y, change this, change that. Send me back a draft of this. I'll make some comments, okay? What is that conducive to? Well, it's conducive to these people being able to be sauced out of their fucking minds all day. Okay? It's not like they have to do anything physical, and it's not like they're actually doing the heavy lifting on the product. They have all this knowledge, and now they're just able to kind of spot, right? So many of these folks are raging alcoholics, okay? They're in a pressure cooker. They barely sleep. They're a fucking heart attack or a stroke waiting to happen, okay? And there's people watching this right now, I'm going to guarantee you, who are listening and being like, oh my God, I know several of these people in law, okay? So when you get that sort of partner in a big law firm, that partner has a lot of power, they have a lot of sway, they're in a supervisory role, and they oftentimes pressure their colleagues, associates, subordinates to partake in that, right? Like drinking is part of the workday. Drinking is part of the expectation. It's part of the culture. It's the done thing. Well, I'm here to tell you that is completely and utterly inappropriate. Okay, completely and utterly inappropriate. I don't care if people, right? Like you want to go out, you have a big win, you want to go celebrate, or it's Friday after work or whatever. Like that's all good. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is the specific type of big law partner who is a raging alcoholic, heavy drinker. It is notorious and well known throughout the firm. And these people make that part of the firm culture and part of the workplace culture, okay? Now that happens outside of law, but I just have the most familiarity with this problem in law and particularly in large law firms, okay? So I'm here to tell you, you don't have to tolerate that. You don't have to accept that. You don't have to go along with that, okay? You have a right to go to work and to do your work and do your job and not have this alcoholism and this culture of heavy drinking be pressured on you or foisted upon you. You have a right to go to work and do your job and not have this be basically an unwritten expectation, okay? Where it's like, hey, if you want to be in the inner circle and you want to get ahead here, then you got to be, with us drinking and boozing it up. And so like, let's unpack that, right? Let's unpack that, okay? In terms of American culture, all right? American culture, in particular, like sort of American masculinity culture, okay? There is like a weird, perverse thread that flows through that, where it's kind of like, let's all get like totally fucked up, blitzed out of our minds and do a bunch of like really wild, fucked up shit. And then like we're all in on it and we all know, right? Like we all know. Like we all know we've like gotten real drunk out of our minds and man, we've done some crazy shit and we got some stories and we got some secrets. And so we all know, okay? So now, right, circle of trust, right? We know about these shenanigans, we know about some skeletons, and so we're all gonna keep it hush hush, right? Secrecy. Anything like that, okay? Any sort of culture like that, because that's part of how it works, right? That's part of the concept of bonding that's going on there, right? It's like a secret society. We all know the dirt. We've all done a bunch of dirty shit we're aware of, right? Keep it a secret amongst us. That's to make us a tighter knit group, okay? That is perverse and maladaptive by my measure, okay? I don't like that. That doesn't sit well with me. But at either rate, okay? You have a lot of law firms, finance, banking, other industries too, where they have this sort of culture where drinking is the done thing. In fact, to a point of like just alcoholism being part of the company's culture. You don't have to tolerate that. You don't have to tolerate that. You don't have to go along with that. You don't have to partake in that, okay? And where does this go legally, okay? I have a couple different concepts, okay? And I'm just gonna spitball and throw some of these out there, all right? A lot of times these cultures, right, lead to other problems, okay? Because if you have just heavy, unchecked drinking, it's part of the culture, it's encouraged, that often leads to a bunch of other externalities, okay? That's where you see things like harassment, sexual assault, workplace violence, anything involving alcoholism or substance abuse as part of the workplace culture is going to have a direct correlation to an increased number of those types of incidents. Okay, that's one. Two, any workplace culture of this nature, right? The heavy drinking, the alcoholism, that being encouraged, that being, supported, facilitated, any culture like that, okay? That is going to be fertile territory for a variety of negligence claims that go the direction of negligent retention, negligent supervision. Okay, the company has a duty to take reasonable steps to protect its folks, protect its employees, protect its colleagues from harms and from situations that are reasonably foreseeable. Okay, and so if you have a pressure cooker environment, it's high stakes, it's intense hours, and there's like raging alcoholism as part of the culture that's being encouraged. And then you probably have a track record of different sort of harassment, assault, that kind of thing happening. You go back, 5 or 10 years, you have 100 plus employees or whatever it is, you have a history of these sorts of things happening. At that point, the company is clearly on notice of the situation, the culture, the foreseeable consequences, okay? So if you're working in one of these environments and it is leading to or facilitating or correlating with harassment, assault, workplace violence, abusive behavior, then it is entirely possible that you may have viable legal claims against the company. That's one, okay? But number two, and this goes back to a point I've made in several other discussions. Number two is you have to ask yourself whether that is an environment in which you want to remain, okay? That's not a legal question. That's not a legal question. That's a life question, all right? Do not navigate these types of situations with an eye toward setting up a case, right? Some people have reached out to my office over the past couple of years and said, they're in a terrible workplace environment, but they're not quitting because they feel that if they quit, it would weaken their case, and they're trying to stay and get fired because maybe that would give them a stronger case to pursue. That's absolute horseshit, okay? And I don't care what other lawyers have told you, all right? Sure, is it oftentimes easier to pursue an employment discrimination case or a hostile work environment case if a person has been fired? Yeah, sure, that is true. But the idea of waiting in the hopes of getting fired from a terrible workplace environment, that's completely asinine. You shouldn't be gaming out your life and making these types of decisions based on a speculative case that you might someday pursue, where in all reality, only 3 or 4 out of 100 of you have an actual viable case. And even then, it's the rarest case that's going to go for, call it north of $500,000, right? It's the rarest case that's going to go for north of $500,000 in these types of instances. So don't be out there making life decisions and career decisions based on this notion that you're going to game out, a legal case that you might pursue. You have to make a life decision, okay? You have to ask yourself, do you really want to continue working in an environment like this? That's not a legal question. That's a personal question, and you're the only one who can answer that. But I tell everybody, okay? There are other jobs out there. If you're competent, if you're capable, cream rises to the top. And if you can't find what you're looking for in the market, you can always start your own business, because that's what I did. And it's the best decision I ever made. Okay? Happy weekend.